forget. Okay, she usually reminds me. All right, cool. Wonderful. So thank you everyone for stopping in this afternoon or whatever time zone you're in. And I hope that we can have a chance to share some of our challenges right now with offering supervision, feedback, etc. In the remote context before my subway train gets here. So, so we are going to, Letty, you don't have to type really fast. I'm going to send the link to the session, so no worries. So we can just have our tea and take a moment. So since my wonderful Mary Scholl is here, oh, she's probably got some Costa Rican coffee though. Yes, much better. No, is
I got
tea?
Japanese tea today.
Okay, very nice. Oh, it's great to see you, Mary. All right, we're just gonna take a stretch and my arms disappear, which is really cool. Okay, here we go. All right, take a stretch. Come on, Janice Strauss, you need a stretch, I can tell. All right, lady. All right, yes, I will call you out. Roshi, yay. Good, all right, let's roll our shoulders. We are on this learning journey together. So we're gonna start out with the chat. If you can open up your chat and tell me, where are you in terms of the world, in terms of the work you might be doing with remote supervision / coaching / observation. And if you have prior experience with doing supervision using, let's say, video. I'm sure your teachers generally haven't been teaching online, but maybe you have supervised them or given feedback using video. So open up the chat, and I'm going to give you just a moment while we continue to stretch our shoulders to share, because there are a lot of amazing experts here in our session today. So I'm interested, and we're all interested in hearing. Okay, and Odalis, tell us also where you are, in the world and where you do this. Is it in teacher education? Yay, Ray! I have to hear your voice.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Oh, it's great to hear you. Oh, there you are. Beautiful lady. Oh my goodness. Okay. Wonderful. Suzanne. Okay, and Janice, great. It's great to meet you. I know we've emailed, or I bombard you with emails more like. Okay, at the University of Hawaii. Really interesting. And Ching Ching's here, yay. Wonderful. So we have some people who have some experience thinking about even particular programs that they're working with. And this is really helpful to take a look at. Oh, wow. I'd love to talk to each one of you a little bit more. So what I think is really important to kind of start out with today is something that, well, Mary and I have used when we've presented together, which is this Thehari window. And I can see a lot of you. God bless you for keeping your cameras on. That's so awesome of you. So those of you who have your cameras on, just raise your hand if you're familiar with the Thehari window, and don't raise your hand if it's something new. Okay, good number of you. So this is obviously a tool that's used when we think about feedback. And we're usually thinking about it in terms of our teachers that we're working with, the areas that our teacher and us as an observer are really aware of, the open area, the areas that are blind spots for our teachers that they're not as aware of, the areas that are hidden, areas that our teacher doesn't want to show us, doesn't feel safe showing us. And then there's this unknown space where I don't know it, and my teacher that I'm observing also is not aware. But I want you to think about yourself too as a supervisor or a teacher educator or someone who guides or gives feedback and is doing observation of teaching. Place yourself into the Thehari window as well. So you too are on a learning journey. And I think for those of us who are observing, wow, more than ever, because we have not spent our careers teaching remotely. We did not spend our careers when schools were closed and reopened because of a pandemic. Because I know none of you were around during the Spanish flu of whatever year that was. So some of us are getting up there, but we have not lived through this. So we're new to this. And it's kind of, it's a big challenge for us to feel that we can really support teachers in such incredible new situations. And we also might be new to supervising just via video. You know, maybe we're just used to going to the school, to the institution, the language institute, whatever the setting is, watching the lessons and feeling that energy of the kids or the adult learners, picking up a lot, and then sitting down right afterwards and having this conversation. That's kind of what we're used to. So this is a big shift for us. So I want you to feel just part of a community of practice, because we who coach or give feedback or who do supervision, we don't get anyone doing that for us. So no one is watching us coach or supervise and telling us, hey, you know what, Laura, I really saw this, or what about that? We're really kind of alone. It's a very isolated kind of teacher education experience. So the only times we can really kind of check in is these moments with each other, people who get it, who also do observation, also do feedback. So I think that that's really important to remember right now, that there is a lot unknown. For our Thehari window, you know, you could say that the unknown areas might be the biggest, and we don't even know what to hide or what we're not aware of, what's a blind spot, because it's just very, very new. So I think it's important to just stay in that open zone and realize that maybe more than ever, you're really learning from the people you're observing. So that's good and that's healthy. And instead of pretending, I think it's important to just use it as an opportunity to change that dynamic in our conversation. So it's really a collaborative, constructed, interactive experience for our teacher and for us. And we know that great teaching, great TESOL practice, it's the same really, whether you're online or in person. It's just you need a lot more preparation, a lot more tools when you're doing it online. But a lot of the principles, of course, are going to apply in both settings. So we're not so new, maybe after all. So we're going to just quickly talk about video just as a tool in supervision, teacher observation, looking at this as we do it remotely and also as we do it for remote teaching. Look at how, for those of us in teacher education, we can incorporate some scaffolding type of assignments or in any kind of teacher training context, I think. And then hopefully have a little time to have some interaction. So I think one of the things that's important is to clarify the difference between what we mean by virtual. What is virtual teaching? So in a lot, and I'm going to speak a lot to other people in teacher education because that's my context right now, but hopefully it will make sense wherever you are. Right now, for our teacher candidates to get experience, our teacher learners to get experience, you know, we can't just send them into schools and let them practice. So we're using a lot of simulated experiences, which is to say they're role playing. They are using things like videos of practice or other artifacts to talk about what might happen or what does happen or what they might do, which is very valuable. Those simulations are always valuable, and perhaps we're using them more than ever because we can't just put teachers into settings, but we should retain this. We should keep this always because it's a really wonderful way to facilitate teacher learning. So for example, if I'm a teacher and Mary is training me and I can't go do this thing, but she can show me a video of teaching that she has on hand. I can now watch this simultaneously with her. I can look at it and unpack it, and she can figure out what I'm thinking about it, you know, without kind of hurting anybody. You know, I don't need to bring in students, and it's a great chance if you're working with a group, if you're doing a training for a group of teachers, to be able to kind of build a professional vision, a shared vision. It's really hard to create shared vision in your staff or among your teacher candidates when everyone is in a different setting and no one ever gets to see each other. So simulations are really rich for teacher learning. But we also want actual interaction. So actual interaction is still happening, but hey, Andrea, good to see you. But it's happening in a couple ways. It could be asynchronous and it could be synchronous. So in other words, my teacher candidates might be working with English learners right now in classrooms. So a lot of us are in places in the world where teaching is happening in the building right now, okay? Or it could be hybrid. So they're teaching in person, but they're also teaching somewhat remotely, or they're teaching all remotely. But they're really teaching kids or adults. And so that creates the opportunity to, again, reflect, assess, provide feedback in remote teaching context. So I just wanted to clarify, sometimes some of the terminology is overlapping, but I think it's good to acknowledge really the differences so you can make a plan to use both kinds of experiences when you're working in teacher learning and teacher education. So let's imagine now, let's imagine that Sonal is my supervisor, okay? She's over there on the right. And I'm this dude on the left, okay? So she's my supervisor, but it's not teaching, it's an art program. So I'm doing a painting, and then Sonal has to sit with me and talk to me about, you know, what I did well, what my strengths were, what composition I used, what theories I was using, where I'm going with next time, where will I improve, all of that, right? So we sit down, you know, with my painting, right? And we discuss it, and I can improve, and she can understand what my thinking was, and then I can go ahead in my craft as an artist. Okay. Let's imagine that Sonal and I sit down to have that conversation, but the painting's just been thrown out in the trash or recycled, let's say. It went out in recycling. So there's no more painting, it's gone. But she's gonna sit down with me because she's got a lot of notes. You see all those notes she has there that she's looking at. So she's gonna read all of her notes and tell me all of the things that she saw, the strengths, the areas for improvement, what was happening in this corner, what was happening in this corner, right? But I don't exactly remember it that way. And, you know, I have a different memory than she does. So it sets us up for this kind of dynamic where I probably feel a little defensive, and maybe I don't exactly agree with her, but she's got power, you know, she's my supervisor. So I kind of just have to agree with what she's saying. And maybe she thinks I understand what she's saying because I'm nodding, but I can't really prove it because there's nothing there. So if she were to ask me, you know, a question, I'm kind of just relying on my memory about the situation. Obviously, this is a parallel to teaching, right? And doing teacher supervision when we do it the old-fashioned way, which is we sit down and we talk about the teaching. And I don't care if your teaching was done remotely or your teaching was face-to-face, or we sit down as supervisors with nothing but thin air. The only data we have is our own notes. So that further empowers us and props us up in this power dynamic. And if I don't remember something exactly, well, Sonal can tell me, well, I see it here. At 4:55, this and this was happening. So she has all this data on her notes. And she's also decided what she's going to look at. And I have to kind of follow along with what she's looking at. So you can kind of nod if you're kind of following along with my metaphor here. Okay. And now on top of it, in teaching, when we talk about teaching, so Sonal has talked to me about my teaching. There's nothing there to look at. It's disappeared. And now she pulls out a really big rubric. and it has like, you know, maybe 80 categories of things. Those of us in teacher ed, just, we know all about this. So on top of having notes, she's got this big document. It's this huge rubric, and I'm crushed now. There's no way for me to go. I'm trapped in this situation. So that is not exactly what we, you know, envision for our supervision or coaching experiences. But imagine now, so Nala and I sit down to talk, but this time we're looking at my video. It's not the same dude. I'm sorry. I was like fishing around online. Okay. So now we sit down, and of course you notice, so Nala's in her house and I'm in my house, but we're talking about my teaching in a way that's more grounded than ever, because we're both looking at the video. It's like putting the artwork back into the equation, because now she can say, tell me about this part. Tell me what you were thinking about this area or that area. And now I can participate. I can say, oh, well, this is what I see here. And she can actually do this assessment, dynamic assessment. She can kind of find out what I'm thinking before she lays out like 30 things that I could do better or differently. Remember that you have a lot of expertise. That's why you're in the role of giving the mentoring, the coaching, the supervision. And as mentors, coaches, supervisors, we have the best of intentions, and we want to give a lot to our teachers, but we don't always know what they can pick up. So it's kind of like comprehensible input. You know, we're giving them a lot, but we don't always know, are we meeting the I+1? Are we where they are? So how can we adjust or know this? This is a great way to do that, because I can, instead of telling him everything I'm seeing, I can ask him, show me here, or tell me about this part. And we can explore together. That's not to say I'm not going to bring his attention to certain things, because of course I probably will. But in this case, I can just find out, you know, tell me about that student here. And of course, now with the remote teaching, so much is new. You know, tell me about why your students have their cameras off or on. Tell me about how you see the chat function being used. Tell me about your use of the breakout room. Tell me about this or that. And you can really learn together. This creates a really different dynamic. And this is why video is very, very powerful. And it radically changes the conversations you have with teachers. So I call this kind of artifact-based post-observation conferencing. It doesn't always have to be a video. It could simply be a student work sample, right? What it does is it changes the conversation from memory-based to artifact-based. I don't like using data-driven or evidence-based, because it just seems so accountability and testing-ish. But it's really about, as an artist uses, or an archaeologist, you know, is looking at objects to understand a culture. That's why I really like the word artifact, because we're really just trying to understand more. And it's not about judging the teacher. It's really about helping your teacher enter into this amazing universe of exploring classroom interaction, which is endlessly fascinating, which is why we as viewers of teaching never see the same thing twice. Even if I'm looking at 5 minutes in the beginning of a lesson and 5 minutes at the end, it could be really different experiences. And it can be the same activity that I've seen a million times, some kind of, I don't know, think, pair, share, something that's been around since the, you know, dirt was invented, you know, in TESOL, but it looks different every time, because it's our personhood. It's that teacher, and it's those particular learners at that particular moment in time. And so it's rich with that humanity. And we want to be able to open up and really explore things that we can predict universally, like if I give students a chance to think, pair before they share, they'll tend to talk more, and help teachers see trends and things that they can call on. But using those artifacts to spark the conversation, it helps us stay really close and granular to the conversations about teaching rather than broad. It was great, the kids were engaged, it went well, which does nothing for us really as learners. Even if you say, oh, it was great, wonderful, you're the best thing I saw. I think we know that that doesn't really fuel learning. So we need to get much more specific. And being specific means we're describing. It's not about strength and weaknesses, glows and grows, hot and cold. That creates this evaluative framework. And everything is about, am I going to get praised or am I going to get criticized? Which is why teachers fear observation and feedback. And we really want them to see it. Of course, we're always nervous, and that's very healthy and normal. But we want to see it as an opportunity to obviously grow and learn. And it's something as educators, you can never finish with. You're in that for a career. And of course, you want to adapt those practices to your own self when no one's there. You're watching, noticing, and thinking always as a reflective teacher. And we really want to leave teachers after that conversation with us feeling excited and empowered about going back to try something new, to explore something new. Their awareness is expanding every time after these conversations, as opposed to the traditional, which is us showing our expertise. So we sit down and we can write, lots and lots of notes, tons of notes, and we can fill out long rubrics, but that's really not the point. When we talk about in classrooms, let the kids do the work as opposed to the teacher. As a supervisor, don't do all the work. The work is to be done by the teacher, to be owned by the teacher, directed by the teacher, and facilitated by you. So I think, again, video is a really great tool. I don't think you can really have those kind of supervision conferences without the artifact there. So supervisors, we know that video has a lot of benefits, and because we're in this remote context, again, whether you're supervising someone who's face-to-face or you're supervising someone who is teaching remotely, right now your conversations post-teaching with them, their reflective conversations, are probably using video. So even if you've used video sporadically, you're probably going to be using it a lot more because you're likely not going physically to watch the teaching. So these are just a couple of suggestions. This one is so important. Teachers need to watch their video before they speak to you. Otherwise, there's no point. Usually, again, let's say Suzanne, she's going to come see me. We chat right afterwards because it's just convenience wise. I'm not going to drive all the way out to her school again to talk or meet up with her again. But we're already time and distance removed because let's say I'm teaching at whatever time, Suzanne can't come see me anyway. So I hit record and then we speak. And that delay could just be the next day or the day after that, within a couple days, but I've had a chance to review my video. That changes what's going to happen in the conversation. Now, Suzanne can tell me what you want to talk about. What did you notice? She probably has something too that she's noticed and she wants to talk about, but it's a great chance to promote teacher leadership. Let the teacher lead the conversation, help them have those professional dialogues, because this is going to be their career and where they're going to direct it. And we don't want to create that learned helplessness where it's like, oh, Suzanne, tell me what I'm supposed to look at. Tell me if it's good. Tell me if it's bad. That we kind of set up when we do things traditionally. You can also try asynchronous debriefing. So let's say Suzanne and I don't really have time to get together and speak about my video. There are so many ways to do this now. So I could share my video with Suzanne. She then can open up a simple Google Doc. She could open a Google Doc and just mark some times where she had questions, and I could do the same. And we could just respond to each other over the course of a week or several days. We don't actually necessarily have to get on the phone and do it, or on a Zoom. We can also use tools like, this is a free tool called Vialogs, where you upload your video and it automatically timestamps. So I can put in a comment as I'm noticing something and it will timestamp it. The timestamped stream I can respond to. So let's say Alexa is my supervisor. She and I have both looked at my video. I've put in, maybe she tells me, put in two comments, and I'll put in 2 comments, all right? And we both put in comments. I can see what does Alexa want to look at, and I can respond right there. And as soon as you click the comment, it brings the video to that part of the video. So it's a really nice, easy tool to use. But you don't even need that. It can just simply be a Google Doc. So you can play with asynchronous. Some students really like it because everything's written down. Sometimes they're so nervous when they're talking to you, they can't remember half the advice you gave them or the suggestions. And it's also nice for resources. Let's say Ray is checking in on a teacher and they're both so busy, it's so hard to find time. So they set up some kind of Google Doc or use Biologs. And the teacher says, well, I really don't know other ways to do this. Do you have any suggestions here? And Ray can put in links. She can add things. And so it can work quite well to try out, especially, obviously in our current context. Think about other artifacts. So combining them. So let's say that Kim and I are going to talk about my lesson, and she has my lesson plan and she has the video. Maybe we just look at, one portion of my lesson, and I go to that part. I look at that part of my lesson on the lesson plan. I look at the video, making the connections between the plan and what I really did, or the student work and what I thought I was going to do or what I thought I was doing are also very powerful. Remember that we're working with adults, even if they're younger. Our adult learners have entrenched beliefs. So a 5-year-old does not have entrenched beliefs, but a 30-year-old does. So we need to jar them out of complacency, and the dissonance between what they thought was going on and what was really going on, those are your teachable moments as a supervisor. That's where you go in. Oh, it was great. It was wonderful. And then you're saying, okay, well, what was planned here? Students will discuss. Okay, and let's see what happened there. One person was speaking. That wasn't a discussion. All right, so now we got to go back to the plan. What did you need to have there so students would discuss? And those are the great things about using artifacts, because if I just tell you, hey, I don't know about that student discussion, it didn't seem like a lot of people were talking, I feel very defensive right there. I'm going to come up with some excuses. Oh, well, the students are shy, they don't want to speak, they're in their silent period, even though they've been here for 10 years or whatever. So just directing to the artifact can really help. And that works well for being remote, because it gives you more time. You can pull things up. You can examine different pieces that you might not have right on hand when you're physically going to do supervision. Okay, another important practice is to video record intentionally. So if, for example, let's say Janice, I'm your teacher candidate, and you know that we're going to talk with the added benefit of some video, some portion of my video that we're going to talk about, right? It's much more effective for me to know what it is we're going to be looking at and video for that, capture that before we speak in the post-observation conference. And that's true whether I'm teaching face-to-face or remotely. So for example, let's say, Janice, I stink at language objectives. Gee, surprise, surprise. So I write content objectives, but I really don't know how to write a language objective. And my students never really practice any particular language forms. This is for the US people. Okay, so that's an issue. So we're gonna really focus on seeing me model the target language and seeing the students using the target language. That's gonna be something I have to capture in my video. That's gonna have a washback effect on my lesson plan. I'm now going to plan definitely to have that practice, and I'm going to video for it. And you know what? If I don't get it on Tuesday, I could video on Wednesday and try again, or video on Thursday, because now I'm not waiting for Janice to show up on Tuesday and come hell or high water. I better do this thing on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Now, because of the remote context, maybe I can capture it another day as long as I send this video to you. And then when Janice sits down with me, there are no surprises. I know exactly what it is that I was trying to do. She knows what I was trying to do, and we can really work together. We can team, and I can say, this is what I was trying to do, and we can work more specifically and more productively. Remember that when you go into your face-to-face conferences from before, you would say, oh, I'm going to spend, I don't know, 40, 45 minutes with a teacher. And sometimes you'd spend an hour and a half with a teacher or whatever. And you probably covered too much territory. Being online creates more boundaries. So we can say, all right, we're here, we're going to be here for 30 minutes. So let's be really focused. So instead of a lot of all of the other talk, we can just say, let's pull up the video where you were trying to get you were modeling, let's say, the language. And because you already knew, you had an agreement with the teacher of what it is the practice was, it's a lot more efficient than let's just see what happened. What did you think went well? What did you like? And all those really broad questions that may not lead anywhere, because the teacher's going to go to the hidden area. They're going to hide those things from you on the Thehari window and show you what they think you want to see. So I recommend that intentional video recording. You can also think about, for you, what are some of the potentially checklists, observation tools, or whatever that you normally use at your sites, and they can pick something from it. Not the entire rubric or checklist, of course, but it might be a particular area. And one thing I want to share with you, which is linked here, and I will share the slide deck, is a, I'm going to make this a little smaller so it fits. This is a tool that we're piloting where I work at Hunter College. It's not specific to TESOL. It's a general remote teaching checklist. And it has a lot of really specific things that you could look for if you were watching a live remote taught lesson. And then following this rubric, which you'll have access to, is the same kind of things, what you might look for, but in a an asynchronous lesson. Okay, so sometimes you might be supervising or giving feedback for a teacher who's teaching asynchronously. You know, they're posting things, they're posting videos, they're responding to students. That can also be coached and supervised. And that's really different for us because we're just used to seeing live teaching. And even if it's live on Zoom, it's still live teaching. So we kind of feel the same. We do the same things. So you're welcome to use this and pluck maybe a few of these items. It can be helpful for a teacher even just to see, you know, what are some of the things you might be looking for when you're looking for student engagement in a remote taught lesson. So I offer that up to you. And if you wind up using parts of it, I would love to hear. Yes, Estella, I'm going to share a link to this whole slide deck in a minute, and inside it are all the sublinks to everything. Okay. Okay, so if you do have a teacher teaching remotely, whether they're sync or async, so there are some unique opportunities, I think, for the video coaching. One is that if your teacher is using Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, there is a record tool right in the platform. So there's no schlepping cameras anywhere or figuring out how to, you know, have them use, especially Zoom, you can just record to the cloud, or if it's Google Meet, it would record to the Google Drive, and you can make it really actually easier. And don't feel that you always have to watch the whole thing. So it could be more focused. It depends on your situation. Of course, some of you are doing really full-on formal observations and you feel, I got to watch 40 minutes. But if it's more coaching like, then it could just be, let's just see, how do you open your lesson, or just choose any 10 minutes. Honestly, 10 minutes is a lot to really watch. And you can decide what part of that lesson, and the teacher can just hit record and then hit stop record if they want to. So they have a smaller video to share with you. When teachers prepare async lessons, there are a lot of video materials usually that they're putting in there. Oftentimes they are recording themselves, voicing over a PowerPoint or using Loom or any of these tools. And some of them are really poorly done. So those are also opportunities, if they are delivering a lot of English language teaching through async, maybe you can look at some of those materials. Whether it's sync or async, it's a lot easier to visit your classroom. Like Mary's in Costa Rica, I can easily visit her classroom, and that has never been the case. So maybe instead of that one really long formal, maybe you go twice for half the time, because now you don't have any commuting problems and you get better sense of really where the teacher is at. It could be something where they're like, oh my gosh, I just trying to focus on getting the students to participate on this remote, classroom. So perhaps what you can do for them is say, all right, let's look at it. Try out some of these tools, try adding Jamboard, try adding Mentimeter, try adding this or that. And then I'll come back later and we'll see how you're doing with that. So you can have them set something like a pre-post. And of course, the conferencing, as we mentioned before, also happens via video. So why don't you as a coach hit record? It would be a great opportunity to actually see yourself in the coaching role. Put yourself in the situation your teachers are in, and you can reflect on it later. You could even tell the teacher, hey, we're going to sit down and talk for 30-35 minutes. I'm going to record it because I want to look at my coaching. And you can have the recording too if you want to go back and look at any of the things we talked about that maybe we're both going to forget. And that is also an opportunity that we really didn't have before, because if Roshi and I are sitting together at the new school and we're having our conference, probably I don't have a camera on the conference. So this is a great way for you also to explore the video coaching. So just a couple practices to keep in mind. We're always helping teachers notice. We're not, we can do no more than that. We're not helping them. We're only helping them notice. So once they notice, they can start to decide how they're gonna play with and make changes. So there are a lot of tools that we can use. We talked about using Google Docs. You could even preload your Google Doc with a template. You could put something on there like a table or graphic organizer that helps them organize the notes they're going to take on their video. So that can kind of focus the conversation. If some of you have used Edpuzzle, there's also PlayPosit. It's a great tool where you can upload any kind of video from YouTube or like a video like this. And you can place markers on it that offer up the chance to create a question or a comment or anything, and you can't move past it until you've answered the question. So for example, let's say I've created my video, I've shared it with Anne. Anne could watch it and just post, tell me more about this here. She goes along, tell me more about this here. And she stops, she adds the question. And then asynchronously, I can open up the video and answer the questions that Anne put at those markers. So you can play with some of those tools that actually, Google Docs that are preloaded and Edpuzzle are good teaching tools also. So you can actually help your teachers with technology as part of the supervision process. Keep the focus very, very narrow. We're in a tremendous moment of stress and learning. So think about those guidelines that I just shared with you. You can pick one area, for example. Just getting students to turn on more cameras. That could be your goal. Getting all the students to post into chat. That might be a goal. Or a single tech tool. It could just be, I've been too afraid to use anything in Zoom. I'm just going to try using polls. I'm just going to try using the breakout rooms. I'm afraid to send my kids off. I'm afraid to send my adults off because what's going to happen if I use breakout room, So it doesn't have to be right now at this time, some massive pedagogical thing. It can really be a tool, because that's where the teachers are and you're meeting them where they are right now. And the single tool is an entry point to talk about a lot of other aspects of what's going on for them. Again, they're feeling so vulnerable, so new. Even those of us who've taught for years, we feel like new teachers because now everything is happening in this new way. So even just something like, let's just share our screen. Show me something that you were trying to do with your students. Let's look at it together. Is okay, you know, and give teachers a chance to take a breath and to self-reflect. So for example, let's say you use Google Classroom and you have all your materials in that lesson. As the teacher, before we meet, just open up a doc, write what you're thinking right now, good, bad, or indifferent. You don't have to show me. Hide it. So in other words, save as draft so it doesn't appear in the Google Classroom. And then it can be there when we talk. You could go back to how you were feeling at that moment when you finished your lesson. Okay, so I'm going to offer these two. I'm going to kind of wrap up here so that we have time to interact. There are certain questions that are probably going to be very common and persistent right now, just general coaching questions. Like, how do I set up the live session so students can interact with each other? That can just be the basic question. How do I get students to take risks with English in a live online class or an async class? You know, how do I provide feedback on form? You know, these are just general teaching of English questions that can just be brought out and applied here to the remote teaching situation. If you're in teacher ed, don't forget about the seminar leaders. They play an important role in supporting and scaffolding what you do as a supervisor. That's a little plug for my book, so I'll get to that. I have that at the end. Hopefully there's some analysis activities going on. Maybe some of you can do these depending on, you know, your role vis-a-vis your teachers that you work with, but help teachers first understand how to describe. If they can't describe, if all they do is evaluate, it's really hard for them to enter the conversation with you. Help them see what the practice is. If you are doing a workshop or some kind of teaching a class and you're using, let's say, Mentimeter, capture that and show them how you got your participants to come out and then come back in. Just sharing other people's practices or your own can be very helpful. And the sharing among each other. So if you have a few teachers you're working with, it would be wonderful if they could share now their practice. It was always very hard to do intervisitation because of time, but now teachers can see each other's practice much more easily. So maybe they all grab a clip of where they tried to do something like an icebreaker, and they can build that community of practice among each other. Okay, I'm going to go forward here. So think also about scaffolded viewing. Even if you just got your teachers to take a screenshot, a picture, just a picture can be really an interesting entry point to have a conversation if they're not yet ready to show more video. If they're ready to show video, start really small, 3 minutes from the class, and then move to that more lengthy, complex kind of viewing. This is an example of a scaffolded task that I use. Kim and I have used in our methods course for a long time, which basically you can just take a video of teaching and you let people watch the video and they try to imagine what the lesson plan had been that teacher had made to drive that teaching. And they try to fill it out. They can then analyze some of the approaches they saw before you show the real lesson plan, or you might never show the real lesson plan. You don't even need to. It helps them make those connections between practice and planning, because ultimately the only thing we really control is the plan. There's a lot of things that happen unexpectedly, but the more we can take those experiences and turn them into the next plan, the stronger teacher we become. So that could be a way to build up some capacity before they start to look at their own plan. Here are some resources, blogs, books, articles. I do have a book that came out in 2019 that has basically just lots of activities for reflection with video. They're very practical. So they give you the templates and all of that. So some of you might be interested in that. One of the neat things that I want to share here, which is this Padlet, is a great resource of from teacher educators, not just in TESOL, but across the disciplines, with their actual video analysis assignments. And there's many of them. There are, I don't know, about 30 here posted that they are letting you take and share. And they're kind of spaced in terms of a teacher really new to looking at video to teachers who are now really at the point of practicum and looking back at their practice. And you're welcome to use those and adapt them or whatever for your purposes. And what I want to do before we run out of time is any questions, any thoughts. I'm going to stop the share so we can see each other a little better. And I'm going to share the link to this PowerPoint. So just go ahead if you'd like to unmute and just say anything. If there's a comment or maybe a practice that you have found helpful or a question you want to pose to everyone, go right ahead.
I have a question. This
Yeah,
is Letty in San Diego. So how many of this, I work with teachers in India and we're looking at training in the next 6 months, about 800 teachers. So I want to train right now those who will be observers, but how many of these do you do before you burn out to scale up? How many of these observations you do, even if you do 10 minutes of video? This is it's a lot to do. And if you're going to have 800 teachers, how do you scale up?
You mean, how do you get these people who are supervisors in training ready to do observation?
Right. And they're going to be observing about 50 to 60 teachers. So
you're evaluating them?
Well, observing them and coaching them and practically what you talked about, but we're going to do it in big numbers. We don't have classes of 20 teachers.
Right, right.
And these are all in-service teachers who may or may not have any training in teaching.
Yeah. I think then in a way your teachers, this is a quick answer because obviously I'm sure we could all talk about all of these for a long time, but off the top of my head, what I would suggest is use it as an opportunity to create a shared professional vision among all the teachers and the supervisors. I think one of the big mistakes we make is we train supervisors separately from teachers. So the expectations are not aligned. So if you could get everybody, and the great thing, of course, about, let's say, using a video of practice that you would, everyone could look at, people could enter a form, fill out a form, a Google form or whatever in terms of what they see. And then you can provide an automatic response. So it can be built in as sort of self-assessment in that I might post these things that I'm seeing, and then I get to see what the expert would have said in that situation. And you'll need to do that calibration kind of work, I think a couple of rounds to get people on pace. And it has to be video from the teacher's settings. It has to be video that looks like their classrooms so that they can respond well to it. And then I think some groups, if you're able to bring teachers together to look at those videos and actually have conversations, obviously in smaller groups, with perhaps breaking up your supervisors to subgroups of teachers to have conversations about what they're seeing and noticing in the practice. Those kind of focus group and calibration activities are really what you need when you're doing something on a really large scale like that. And I think it's important even at the small scale. A lot of us do observe teachers and we've never sat down together to really identify what do we mean by an effective teacher in this setting. We don't look through our rubrics with the teachers and say, what does this mean? So I think it's a great opportunity to bring people together and get their vision kind of aligned.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other thoughts, questions, shares, and you're welcome to also post in the chat if you're comfortable with that more than speaking.
Laura,
Yeah.
can I just offer, we did a large project in the Dominican Republic 2 years ago with 360 teachers. So it wasn't 800, but it was 360. And we had we had 20 coaches, and they each had their groups, and they were learning curriculum and putting into practice. And so if anybody wants to talk a little bit about that out of this, I'm happy to share what we did logistically to make it happen. It's so possible. It's so possible. We saw a lot of great transformation and learning. So
That's great. And Mary's a great resource. So maybe Mary, if you don't mind putting your email in the chat, and then Letty can follow up with you as well. Cause you have so much experience with that. And Ray, take care. I think the logistics of camera and everything are really removed now. But we're afraid because we don't want to stress teachers out, you know? So if we are going to drop into the class, if the teacher feels overwhelmed by hitting record or any of that, and they just wanted to say, okay, Ray, come see me Tuesday at 4 o'clock, then you record. Go in and hit record while you're there and still offer it to them and say, we'll talk, tomorrow or the next day, but I do want you to look at the video a bit beforehand, because it is so wonderful for you as a supervisor to not feel like you have to write up these extensive things and watch all these. It's like painful sometimes to watch all these videos of teaching, especially novices. So it's a way to, I think, help you in this time of trying to coordinate with so many teachers and give feedback, is to empower them to kind of take a look themselves before you speak with them. I'll see you, Ray. I know you got to run.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing. We always say that teachers will teach the way they were taught, and I think we also supervise the way we were supervised. And so I've been really married to these rubrics because that's always how I was evaluated. And so this is a great reminder for me to step a little further away from those. And so I'm excited to try out all your tips. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I think when I was learning to be an ESL teacher, and I was in my master's program, the mentor that I had was like obsessed with video, and we had to haul this huge cameras into the room, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I got to video myself. And I realized years later, like, wow, that was probably really good. Because for me, that was the way like you said, the way you observe is with video. So that's a great point. And I think everything that we do as supervisors, vis-a-vis teachers, is a lot of the same patterns that teachers do with learners. So I think disrupting the talk, getting the teacher to talk more instead of us, the teacher to do the work instead of us, all of those are really good pieces. Okay, great, Kay. Any other comments or thoughts before we adjourn, or questions?
I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Andrea. Who's asking?
Somebody else said they had a question.
That was me. Yeah.
Oh, hi there.
Hi. So I'm at Indiana University in Indianapolis, and I'm here to brainstorm how your recommendations and examples could be used for peer reviews of teaching in the English department, because I'm on a committee. But anyway, I'm a teacher trainer, and so my question is, I actually have students who are doing a TESOL practicum or a TESOL internship right now, and some of the arrangements for some of them have fallen through as far as actually having the opportunity to teach in a physical classroom this semester. And you mentioned earlier on that you've had students who did this kind of like in a mock teaching situation.
Simulations. Yeah.
Can you describe a simulation like that and how you conducted it, what they actually did?
Yeah, well, once you have video material to work with, there are so many different activities, you know, you could do. And that's kind of, that's sort of the substance of my book, is a lot of these types of activities. But for example, let's say you do have an observation rubric that you would have normally used for them in their own teaching. You can have them take a look at that using a video of practice. So I generally, you know, always I recommend as a general principle that you model it. So in either if it's live in class, synchronous, or you just even create a video, you would want to first let your teachers look at the video, come up with some of their observations, and then pair, and then share out, and then have you kind of guide or adjust. There are things that you can confirm for them, and there are things they didn't see, things they don't know to name as what they are. For example, a new teacher might notice that, you know, someone is using a lot of objects in the class, and they don't know that that's what realia is. You know, they read about things, but they can't always identify them when they see them. Whereas we put them in those buckets because we have the expertise. So you can kind of do a think aloud where you talk through some of the things that you're seeing, and they can watch you do that. And then you would have them, let's say, do it definitely with a partner or a very small group, giving them those video samples. There's a lot of available video of ESL teaching out there. I always do, you know, encourage people to try to find video from their own settings, because teachers tend to reject if it doesn't look like. So if my New York City teachers look at an Indianapolis classroom, they're going to know it's not a New York classroom, you know, just the way it looks, the physical structure, or maybe the makeup of the students or whatever. So if you have video from prior semesters, those are generally the best to use, because it's not about exemplars. And that's something I think is really important for everyone to know. It's not about showing some disaster, of course, but just a normal novice teacher, because if they see some super pro who is teaching, it's too distant for them to accept. They're like, I could never do that, and they shut off. So finding out what the proximal other, you know, like in Bandura's idea of proximal other, it's just someone who's just a little I+1. They're a novice teacher too. There's a lot of room for improvement. All of that is fine. And that as you guide them through describing, Estella, keeping it really focused. So let's, for example, look at this video just for teacher questions. Let's write down all the teacher questions we heard. Okay. Now we're going to look again and see, who does the teacher call on to answer? How do students respond? Do they just call out? Does the teacher call by name? You know, now let's look again at the questions. Are they higher or lower order? Let's take out like Bloom's taxonomy or Webb's depth of knowledge. Let's place the questions. Okay, now let's look at it again. Let's look at the questions and look at wait time. How much wait time was after each question? Okay, now let's look at the questions for what were the linguistic scaffolds that were there for the question. You know what I'm saying? You can look at the same clip probably 20 times with a different focus. And I strongly recommend that as a training mechanism, because they'll appreciate the richness of what's happening. They'll realize each round what they didn't see because the lens wasn't put on. So I think of it like a horse with blinders. You kind of have to tune out certain things in order to observe them well. So when you try to observe everything, you observe nothing. So teaching them how to observe, you can really only do that with video. So I would take that as a real advantage of bringing the teachers up in their ability to do classroom observation, because we know we don't really train teachers usually on how to do it, and yet we do it onto them all the time. So using short clips multiple times, very scaffolded, very facilitated, you know, by you with partners. And then you can start to do longer segments. You can start to do things like I shared with planning, or where you would go next, or focusing on a particular learner in the classroom, or looking at classroom talk. So all of the aspects of teaching that you would normally give them feedback on their teaching, those are things that you can look for in video, and you can have them be in the role. Imagine you're this teacher. You know, what are some of the things that you would do differently next time, or you want to try out? They could make a lesson plan for a follow-up to something they saw in a video? What do you think would happen next? You know, those kinds of things. They can use student work samples. Again, I love artifacts like samples, because they could take a student work sample, which we do a lot in teacher ed, where we look at lexical and grammatical errors and blah, blah, blah. But what about turning it into teaching? What would be the lesson that would come next? And they can do that in pairs or groups. You know, those kinds of activities are very controlled, of course. They're not really natural teaching situations, but they offer a lot in terms of training opportunities. Are you familiar with the Purdue materials, Estella?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All the stuff that Wayne Wright has on that site. Do you know that site, that website?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm going to post it in here. It's a fabulous resource for anyone who does do teacher education. And it has literally tons of, let me see if I can find it. Oh, I can find it. All right, here we go. I'm going to just pop this into the chat. And I'm just going to share my screen really quick so you can see it. It's free, it's available. It basically has these profiles. It has a ton of different kids, and each kid, let's just say Brittany. Okay, so I click on Brittany, it gives me her background, and then it gives me oral language samples of classroom talk as well as informal talk with the oral language observation tool built in, which you could extract and use as well. Also, her doing a read aloud, so you can do a running record, and a writing sample. So this is a rich kind of repository for these type of virtual tasks. And these could be turned easily into, you know, lots of different of these kinds of simulated or virtual fieldwork tasks. So they are not maybe able to get with a kid themselves and do a running record or look at a writing sample, but this is available there. So I hope that you find that useful. Yeah, it's
That's
awesome.
great. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I know we're like at time. I'm happy to sit for another few minutes, but feel free to go. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you got something out of it, or even just like a little reminder of something. And hopefully Mary and I will be presenting at TESOL. I don't know, Mary, are we doing I don't even know, the Pre-Convention Institute?
I would love to. I haven't heard anything though. Have you heard anything?
Heard anything about that? Are they doing them? I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't heard either. We got to find out. But Mary Scholl and I have done a Pre-Convention Institute on observation and feedback at TESOL. So we might be able to do it again. But it's great that you were here. Thank you so much. Definitely, I would love to hear from you. You have my email. So if you wind up exploring something or you just want to brainstorm about it, I would love to hear from you and be able to do perhaps something for TESOL, for the teacher ed intersection, what we're all doing in terms of this. So, oh, let me put a link to my book. That's very kind of you. Let's see. It's on Amazon. And you know, I'll earn like a whole apple if it actually gets sold. So let's see. Here we go. It's crazy. All right, there it is.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's very practical. So there's a lot of these activities in there.
That's good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
practical is always good. All right. Well, I think my subway train is coming now. My 6th train. I miss it. I haven't been on it in a long time. 6 months. I haven't been on the subway. So you're welcome to also. Oh, I'm almost forgetting. Howji. I'm so bad. New York TESOL. Those of you who are still here, I have to plug the conference. So I'm putting the link in the chat, nicetesol.org. So New York State TESOL, we're having a virtual conference November 13 and 14. It's packed full of awesome presentations. and mostly teacher driven because the teachers know how to use these tools because they're already using them. So for me as a faculty, I just absorb everything from the teachers' presentations because I have to go teach methods and I don't know how to use Nearpod and I don't know how to use Seesaw, but my teachers do. So it's a really great place to like absorb. So please come. I have a 15% off code. I'll send it to you in the email. I'll send it afterwards so you can go. I'm going to follow up now. I'll send you the link to the PowerPoint again and to the 15% off for the conference. And thank you so much. It's great to see you, Roshi. Howji are also New York TESOL. And I really appreciate your time. It's great to see you, Alexa. Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Beautiful to see you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.